today I'm doing something a little bit different. I am going to be doing sort of like my thoughts. I just finished reading Sunrise on the Reaping, and so I'm going to be saying my thoughts on the book and why I like it. But also, I'm doing like a capital makeup look. So I'll put a picture of the makeup I'm gonna be attempting to do today. I wanted to do something sort of like, I don't know, like they have a lot of like themes for the makeup, very like nature inspired kind of a thing. But honestly, my makeup's a little limited, so this is what I found that I thought would work. We will see how it comes out. But let's just get into it, okay? I'm gonna put on this sunscreen, this tinted sunscreen as like a base, also just to like make my face a little like tacky, I guess. And I am just raw, my bangs are just gonna be in the way the whole time, okay? So the first thing I wanted to say about the new book was about how I loved how different the actual games function like 20 years earlier. Because since Sunrise and the Reaping is taking place, 25 years earlier, I like how different it actually ends up being instead of just like a carbon copy. Because, that makes sense, but I didn't really think that it was going to be like that. And I really like that she did that, and I really like, and I'm reading The Songbirds and Snakes right now, and it's really interesting to see like how the games progress and how like the different things they add in until we get to Katniss's times, I really liked seeing that. I thought it was like really great, and I liked seeing how the games, the way that they're functioning, it made them seem a lot more incompetent, and just like how unorderly it is, and like how they didn't have like a real stylist, how the reaping went wrong, how the like introduction on the chariots went wrong, like all this stuff is going wrong. And I like how it makes it seem so much less uniform, whereas in Katniss's world it seems so like perfectly done. And I really liked seeing that. I think it's a really interesting look at like how it actually functions. And the next thing being like, I really liked that she was able to take, because I feel like it's almost like pretty formulaic with how it functions. Like we see the day before the reaping, and then the reaping, and then the capital dressing them up and all this stuff. It's almost like very formulaic type of thing. But I really liked how interesting she was able to make each one. I guess I should show you what I'm doing. I got this green palette, so I'm gonna do green eyeshadow. I think that's how I'm gonna start. But I like how she was able to make it like something that was so formulaic, how different she was able to make it. I really like that, especially with like how she's able to show different aspects, or like portray the point of the story but in different ways, and using like different plot points. I thought it was really great. I feel like I'm being too vague, like I don't want to give out details about the story. But going back to like the chariot ride and what happened with Lulu and her dying, and then them getting her like a replacement, and how it was all supposed to make it seem so perfect even though it wasn't. And then how as time progressed with Katniss's games, how it became like more and more actually like functioning like that. I thought it's really great and cool to see that. I just really liked it. I'm gonna like, let's see here, kind of push it up a little bit. Okay, going into kind of each character, I actually really liked, I think I saw online that some people didn't like this, but I actually did really quite like how they gave like the lore to characters we didn't know. I heard some people say that it was like too much like a fan fiction, and I can sort of see where they're coming with that. I could see the like fan fiction angle, but I personally really liked it. I think it's interesting, and I think it really builds on the world that like we already know by adding these different aspects and by getting to know like how Wirus and Mags ended up the way that they ended up. Like, I think that it was really great to see, and I personally really liked it. I do sort of get why people would say it sort of feels like a fanfic. For me, I actually felt that more with like Katniss's background and like the stuff in 12 and less of the capital stuff. The capital stuff for me felt more like it made sense, where like having Lenore Dove and Katniss and what's her name, Lucy Gray, all like vaguely related. That felt more sort of like fanfic kind of a thing to me, and so I do get why people say that, but for me, I felt that less with the capital and more with like stuff back in 12. Okay, I think I have like this green base. It's kind of big. I don't know, I kind of want to make it bigger. I also kind of want to make like the inside of my eye lighter, but I don't really have that lighter of a green. I already used the lightest one. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger because we're doing kind of supposed to be very extravagant. I wish I could get rid of my eyebrows, but I don't have anything for that. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. But yeah, so I really liked the background for the characters. I thought it was great. I liked hearing about it. And I feel like it really builds on the world building and builds on like a lot of the things that we sort of knew, but like getting more details about it. Like I really liked how she tied in that like this wasn't the first attempt to revolt, because I think that makes sense realistically that it wouldn't be, and I think it makes Katniss's whole thing feel more realistic, you know, and I like that it's like, okay, the attempt went poorly. I have this other palette here. I'm gonna take this darkest purple shade to do like a black cut through. We'll see how that goes. So I really liked how they tied in the new games with the old ones. I think, and like making it seem like it was not the first attempt to like revolt and do all of this, because I think it makes it feel a lot more like realistic, and it makes it a lot more sense, in my opinion, that it wouldn't be the first time ever trying to do that. So I really liked that, and I felt like it made the world feel so much more real and full. And how Katniss's world ended up panning out, making more sense, you know? It's actually quite hard to focus during this. And it's interesting to see like how people were punished and how that ended up looking, because in the, you know, in her books, it's referenced a lot that, like, you know, these people ended up losing, you know, like with Haymitch, how he lost the people around him and what that actually looked like. And it really brings light onto like how Snow was like keeping everything in check, you know? Okay, there's that side. Let's see, this is very much so trust the process, but it's supposed to give capital, right guys? Right? And then going on with like the games, I think because in the original Hunger Games we get like a short version of like what happened in his games, and like, but they're seeing it from like what the Capitol is giving them to see. So I really like that she like took use of that and actually like made it a part of it, to say that like Katniss and Peeta think that they saw his games, but what they're really seeing is still just propaganda and is not like actually really what happened. And I really like that because it's such a good way to like expand on what we already know, while at the same time making it more interesting and not just like feeling like we're reading the same thing over again, you know? And I think she did it so seamlessly, in my opinion. I feel like it would be so hard to take something where you already sort of have it figured out, but then like add so much more base and so much more interest to it. I think that that was like so well done, and I loved the whole plot she made with BT and his kid and trying to take over the arena. It was so good because it felt like we were like to understand like how it ended up being what we know it was at the in Katniss's books in Hunger Games. It like going along with it and like finding out like how did we get there, you know? That was so good. Okay, I'm gonna take my darkest shade and I'm going to darken these edges a little bit. I might even mix the purple and green. I don't know if that's a good idea. And one thing I think that is really interesting is how different Haymitch comes off from his own perspective rather than just Katniss's. Because in Katniss's books, there's so much reference to how like her and Haymitch are the same and how they have so much in common and all this stuff. But I feel like the way he functioned in the game was actually so different from Katniss, because inevitably Katniss's goal was to win. Like, she didn't technically believe she could, but it was her goal, whereas his goal really was about the like trying to like show the Capitol up, and it really shows like how they were different. Like of course they both cared about like the people in their lives, they both wanted to save their tributes, but it was so different than how Katniss functioned, because she really did want to win, whereas he just wanted to sabotage the Capitol. And it's interesting that because of that difference in the way that they played it, her actually ending up like accidentally sabotaging the Capitol, it was harder for her to like just be punished, whereas when he did it so overtly, they punished him so much like more obviously and so much more severely. So I think that that is really interesting, and I really liked seeing the difference between the way that they function during the games, but also the way that he like thought of himself and the way that that went along too, because it really was so different than Katniss, where Katniss was thinking that they were so alike, but how like he really didn't, like in the Hunger Games there's this big emphasis put on like how he won because he was intelligent and all this stuff. But in his books, he really doesn't think of himself that way. He doesn't believe in himself that way. It's not like what he's thinking of, really. You know, that's how he thinks of Wiress. But he doesn't believe that he can do that. But then when it comes down to it, he does. And so I liked that we can kind of see that like young lack of self-confidence, instead of actually making him like quite an arrogant character. Like it's interesting to see his mindset behind it and what he's thinking about it. Okay, this is the base. This area right there is so dark and I'm not sure how to get rid of that. That's the base. I'm going to start with a little eyeliner and we might come in. Actually, before that, I'm just gonna add a little bit of like sparkles to my inner eye, make it pop out a little bit more. Oh, that's so much. Oh wait, I hit pan, guys. I hit pan. It's sort of like, I feel like you can kind of see what it's going for, right? It's not really totally even. This one's straighter, I think. And this one's like, you can see that this one's like, okay, let's do, where's my liquid eyeliner? Okay, update, I guess, because I did most of the eyeliner off because it's hard to talk while doing your eyeliner. So now I need to do like little dots on my eyes to look like, I think it's a lily, to look like the little lily pattern. So I think I'm gonna do that with the same liquid eyeliner, and then I'm gonna go in with a pencil eyeliner. So you'll see. This is how it's looking so far. I realize now that in the picture, it like, the line starts from like here. So I have like so much more green under my eye. But that's okay. We're going to push through. I haven't really been online that much to hear about like what other people thought of it, you know what I mean? Like I haven't really heard the hate, so like I don't have like any like counter argument, I suppose. So I do wonder about if she is going to write another book after this one. I heard somebody saying that they think that if she does, it's going to be about Poltarch. And I feel like originally when I heard that, I thought, I don't want that. Honestly, I do not want that. I don't know. I don't really care about him as a character. I didn't really, like, relate to him. But then after reading Sunrise and the Reaping, I was like, actually, that would be very interesting. And it would give, like, so much more information to, like, how we know the Capitol Run and how the Resistance worked, like, on that side. And I feel like it would be so good, because originally I just wanted a book on like the other victors that we know about, but honestly I feel like Poltarch would be a better book for like rounding out what we know about like the resistance and like all that kind of stuff, because we really don't have a perspective on that side. You know, we have Katniss's perspective, who is not, she wasn't really part of the resistance at all. She didn't really mean to be, and she was very much so being like controlled. So it's hard to say that like she is a good example of like, from her eyes, how the resistance is working. And then Haymitch, he has a better grasp on it, but we don't see it till, you know, like, we just see his failed attempts. We don't really see it in like, we just see his failed attempt. We don't see it like working out, or like really the behind the scenes. And then obviously with President Snow, he's not the resistance. He's well, I guess he's resisting them, I don't know, but he, you know, it's, that perspective is more about how the games became how they were, how it got to that point. And I actually like that about Songbirds and Snakes as well, about how it talks about how people weren't really into it. Because I think it's hard to imagine, like, how did we get to that point? You know, how did we get to a point where we're like, yeah, let's kill these kids, you know? So it's interesting to see like how we actually got there and how it led up to being what we see it as in Katniss's world. And we see that both in Songbirds and in Sunrise and the Reaping, like how it got there, you know, and why President Snow feels like he needs to control it. I am going to go on to the face makeup. I'm gonna do this, like, I have this little sponge blush. It's literally way too cute. And then you just like pop this part off. And it's like one of those, like, what do you call them? Like the foundation ones, but it's a blush. And you pump it and then it's a heart. Is that not the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life? Let me know. But I'm gonna blend that in. I feel like this sort of like orangey tone would go good with the green. That's also why I'm using it, but also just because I wanted to show off this super cute heart. I think I need more. I want it to look dramatic. I want to have, I think Capital would have blush blindness for sure. They have everything blindness. Let me stop using the camera. I think this will be easier for me to see what I'm doing. Capital forest look is what I'm trying to go for, you know? Not that maybe appearing as one of the capital is really what I want to go for, but what am I supposed to do? Do what our real rich do and do poor cosplay? I don't think so. Okay, blush blindness has been achieved. Now, I've done this before, and it's always kind of gross looking, but I feel like it's so good for like a weird makeup look, which is I'm going to make my lips green with my eyeshadow. So, here we go. I'm gonna take my black eyeliner and I'm gonna use it like lip liner. I love talking about makeup and doing makeup. I love how much she puts in to talking about the fashion of it. And I think it's very interesting that in a media that really, like, it seems like it's really putting down, like, the fashion aspect. Oh, I need to not talk while I do this. Hold on. Okay. That sure looks like something. So, what I was gonna say is that another thing that I really like how she talks about like fashion and the beauty aspect of it, especially how it seems like it's taking a very like negative look at those things by like the capital, like the capital being the villains, being very like glamorous and very extravagant and ridiculous with it. But I think that's not really the point. I think it's not that, you know, people who dress differently or people who are really into those things, somehow that makes them bad, or bad people are attracted to that. But I think it's more so just about how the influx of money, you know, if you don't have money, you're not as likely to be able to have those things. You know what I mean? And I think it's about really, it's supposed to emphasize how much more like luxurious they are, how much more they have, and about how but also how they have less like things to do, less things to worry about. You know what I mean? Where if they're living this lifestyle where they're not out there laboring, that they get to wear ridiculous things and like high heels and like all these things. Like if you are working in a field, you're not going out there in your like ridiculous hats and high heels and stuff. And so I think really the point isn't that fashion is bad, but that the things that they're doing are leading them into a position in which they have the ability to care about those things, and that's their biggest worry, and that's what it leads to. And I think it's interesting that the worst characters in the actual books aren't the ones even dressing extravagantly. Like of course we talk about how, you know, you can tell that President Snow has like gotten work done, like his like lip filler or whatever. I think she talks about it, like how he has like weirdly puffy lips. But like in comparison to a lot of the other characters like Effie Trinket, he's really not extravagantly dressed. And same thing with President Coin. You know, of course, President Coin's whole thing is that none of them, they all like look the same, but I think it's interesting how much the fashion is involved, how much it's involved for all the characters and how it's supposed to signify things. I love the fashion aspect of it. I really do, you know? So, yes, I think it's great how she portrays it and I guess I don't like that people try to make the whole like capital bad being like just about like how if anybody does anything weird with their looks or whatever, it's like, oh, they're being so like capital. I don't know if you've ever seen that kind of stuff online, but I feel like I've seen that where more alternative looks or just experimenting with fashion as an art, and then people are going, oh, this is so Hunger Games, this is so capital, when it's like, well, what are we really looking at? Are we really actually talking about like how we're exploiting other countries to have these resources, or about the negative harmful effects? Because those things aren't existing just in high fashion, not at all. I mean, the common people's fashion, Shein and fast fashion, is a huge contributor and is just as much like a capital thing as the high fashion is. And so I always sort of get annoyed about that because I feel like you're missing the point. I think this is the finished look. I'll probably put the photo back up. I don't have like fake eyelashes, and I don't have stuff to like make my brows disappear. So if I was to do it again, I would definitely do that. But I think I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's pretty capital, pretty, you know, it's getting there. So this is the look.